Hi, my name is Kevin, and here at my channel I help you learn how to make the web and how to make it look good while you're at it with new videos every single Wednesday. In this video, I'm starting a new series that's going to look at building out a responsive website using things like Sass, Flexbox, jQuery, and my general workflow as well. On the screen now, you can see a rough layout of what I'm going to be building. But I'm not going to jump right into things like I did with the last website build. In this time, what I want to do is I want to show you guys a little bit more of my process and how I work when I'm really building a website. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the other videos in this series. And if you like long series like this, please hit the like button to let me know, and so you want to see more content like this in the future. Now, one big thing that I'm going to be doing differently than what I've done in my other videos is I'm going to be using Sass for this series. Sass is a CSS preprocessor. If you haven't heard of it or don't really know how it works, well, you'll still be able to follow along, but at the same time you'll see how awesome Sass is. If you've really never used or seen it or anything at all before, you have no idea what it is, I have put a few links in the description below that could be of interest to you. Now, to use Sass, it needs to be compiled. It's not a language that the browsers can read. It has to be turned from Sass into CSS. Now, we can set up everything we need for this using the command line, and maybe one day we will look at that, but for now I'm going to be using an application called Prepros. Prepros is a really nice piece of software, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name of it right. And what it does is it compiles Sass. And, well, it also does more than just compile Sass though. It also has an auto prefixer, so you don't have to worry about vendor prefixes, which is awesome. And that's whether you're writing Sass or just regular CSS, you can turn on your auto prefixing. It also has a built-in auto refresh, so as you're working, you save, it automatically refreshes the browser. You don't have to do it yourself by hitting refresh every time, which is really nice. And there's other apps that do the same thing as this. It's not only Prepros, there's CodeKit, which is super popular. But I like Prepros because it's available on PC, and a lot of them are only on the Mac. And it is available on PC or Mac. Now, you don't have to use Prepros. It's what I use, but it doesn't mean it's the only thing or the best one. But just that's what we will be looking at in this video. I'm also going to be using Github to keep track of my project. Now, the nice thing about that is you guys are going to be able to follow along if you want. And if you want to put in some pull requests, go for it. And if you don't know what a pull request is, don't worry about it. But just like with Sass, you could set up everything with GitHub with the command line, but I'm going to be using their software for this one. It's a little bit more simple to follow along with. Now, along with all that, I'm also going to be explaining my file structure as well as my naming convention as much as possible as I work through the project. And on top of all of that, one thing I did forget is we're going to be using Flexbox quite a lot in this layout. I want this to be a responsive website, and while floats and clears can do the job, Flexbox just makes life a lot easier for some things. And on top of that, of course, we're going to be dabbling in jQuery as well whenever it's needed. Now, with all that out of the way, let's actually jump in and start working on the basic setup for this project. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a repository on GitHub. So I've created a new account here that I'll be using for some of the projects I'll be doing for my videos. We'll call this one responsive start to finish. Description I don't need to know. Public will be fine. I'm going to put in a gitignore, but I'm going to add to that in a second because I don't have everything that I want in there, but I'm going to be using Sass, so I do want it to ignore those. And I'm going to hit create repository. So that's going to start up things. I have my gitignore there, and let's just go to gitignore.io, I think it is. Oops. Gitignore.io, not getignore. So we're going to be using Windows computer. So if you're on a Windows or a Mac, I'm using Sass. And I think that's it. Am I using anything else? I think that's it. So I'm going to hit create. All of that, and I'll just grab all of this, copy that, and we'll come into my gitignore. We will edit it. And this is just a basic editor, but we can go ahead and paste that right in there. And I can commit those changes. And I'm just doing this directly to my master branch. If you haven't used GitHub before, what this is doing is there's certain files that get added in. If you're on a Mac, there's some file structuring things that are in there. And if you're on a PC, you know, it's a lot of hidden files and different things that help set up everything. I could probably, no, I think that's pretty good. And so the whole idea here is if there are these little hidden files and invisible files that you don't want brought into here because they're just extra fluff that you're not really paying attention to and they're not really part of your project, then you can have Git ignore those. All right, so awesome. With that done, now I'm going to open up the GitHub app. And if you don't have it, you can download it over at desktop.github.com. And you can get their software right there. And I'm going to click this little plus icon. And I'm going to clone my responsive start to finish onto my computer. So because I've already created it through their website, it exists. There's a file in there. My git ignore file is in there. I could just create something on the local path, create a new one. I could add something. But in this case, I want to be cloning it. So I'm going to clone this one that I've already made. And we're just going to clone it right onto my desktop. I'll click OK. It should go pretty fast. The only thing we have in there is our git ignore. No local changes. Let's just make sure no changes, which makes sense. And if I open it up, there we go. We can see, just to show you. Let's take a look. On my desktop, it's added this folder. And if I look in there, the git ignore is right there. And so far, nothing has been changed. So that's normal. We've brought that in, and that's it. So this is set up properly. This is going to be watching for any changes I make to my computer. So anything that I do now that's different from what's on the website, it's going to keep track of. If you don't know GitHub, I do suggest looking at it. This tutorial is not really looking at how to use GitHub, just to show you my process of, I will be using GitHub, so it gives you an idea of how it works, but it's not a true tutorial on it. If you are interested in knowing more about GitHub, please leave a comment down below, and I'll be glad to take a look at that once this series is wrapped up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up with Adam, and let's just move this over for a second. I do want to open up this folder, because I have a few things that I need to make in there. So inside of here, we are going to need my CSS folder like usual. We're going to need a JavaScript folder. And something that's a little bit different from anything else I've done so far, if you haven't used to it, is I'm going to need a Sass folder. So Sass is where I'll write my Sass, and that will eventually get compiled and turned into CSS. Now this Sass folder is where things get a bit more interesting. If you're not familiar with Sass, it might be a little confusing at first, but once I start building out the site, you'll quickly understand what I'm up to. More or less, I'm going to be following the architecture that's used by a guy called Hugo Giraudet. I hope I said his name properly. Giraudet. I'm assuming it's Giraudet because he's French, so Hugo Giraudet. Where he has a website called Sass Guidelines, and there's a link to that in the description below, that has, I've thought, a very nice way of organizing your files. I don't do it exactly like he does, but more or less, that's the style that I do go with as I'm working. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to open up my Sass folder. And in my Sass folder, I'm going to be creating a bunch of different folders in here. So the first one that I'm going to be creating is called Abstracts. I'm going to create another one called Base. Another one called Components. We're going to have a Layout folder. And, whoop, that didn't work. We're going to have a Layout folder, Layout. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that we're going to have. Sometimes there are some other folders that are used in here. So you'd have things like if you're using Bootstrap, you'd have a vendors area. You could throw Bootstrap or Foundation or something like that in there. If you're making it a theme or having different themes in there, you could have a folder for that. What else? Well, I'm only doing the home page, but if you're doing multiple pages in a document, you'd have a pages folder where specific styles for different pages would be found in those in that folder there. And yeah, I think that's it. And if I need one as I work through this, then we can always add to what's in here. And with all of that done, I'm going to open up Prepros, which is what I mentioned before. The nice little application is going to watch this and make sure everything's working properly. You can see here I currently have my coding quickies in there and it's paused. And I'm going to add in a new project. So we're going to go to my quick access, my desktop, and I'm going to choose that folder, select folder, and it's empty right now. Sad face, that's okay. So you can see there's a little plus play button there, and this one is paused. One thing that's important, if you're not working on a project, please pause it. It does use some system resources while you're doing this, so I just strongly recommend you pause things if you're not watching them, but you do plan on coming back to them. If it's something you want to get rid of, you can just right click and remove project once that project is finished. So I want to make sure that this is set up properly. So the first thing I'm going to go and do is check out my options. And I want to look at my project options. Compilers, that's what I'm actually looking for. I want it to auto compile. So my Sass options, auto compile. I do want it to auto prefix my CSS. And I'm going to have it use libfast just because it's quite quick. And I believe that's all I need. Also, you can have it when it's compiling it, you can have it be compressed, compacted, nested, or expanded. I'm going to leave it as expanded, which makes it human readable, just so if ever I need to jump in there and look at it, I can, see if there's any mistakes or any problems coming up in there a little bit easier. So I'm going to leave that there for now. And I think that's good. So I'm going to close that down. And I didn't save that. More options, project options, compilers, auto prefix. Whoops, wrong one. Auto prefix, CSS, that's fine. I want to hit the save option. So now what I need to do, just to make sure things are working properly, is I'm going to make a new file. And in my new file, I should get this ignored too. That's okay. I'll worry about that after. What I want to do is I want to just make sure that this is actually working. So let's just save in an index.html. There we go. So let's save this as index.html. Oops. There we go. That's good. And I'm just going to write a nice simple paragraph. Hello world. I just want to see if this is actually working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that, and I'm going to push this little preview button and hit Open Live Preview. And that's going to open up my browser, and we can see a hello world there. And to see if this is actually working, oops, I should have. We're going to come in here, and a few things I'm going to do. I'm going to go in my Sass folder. I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to go in here and save it as main.sass. And I will be using Sass for this, not SCSS. Sass has two different syntaxes, which can be a little bit confusing. SCSS looks a lot more like CSS, whereas Sass, SASS, is a little bit different, which you'll notice once I start writing some actual Sass. So I'm going to hit save. And for now, all I'm going to do is do a little test on this. So let's take this main.css and try something out. Let's do body, background is red. And that should have created a CSS file, and it did. So what Prepros has done is it's taken my Sass that I have here and it's turned it into this. So it's added in my squiggly braces and my semicolon right there. So that's perfect. So you can see as I jump back and forth between the two. And just to make sure that Prepros is really working, we have auto refresh going and all of that. I'm going to jump up here and just add my link src is equal to, not src, it's a link, it's an href, is equal to css/main.css, and rel is equal to style sheet. That should turn red. There we go. So the auto refresh is working, which is nice. My Sass is being compiled. So let's just try one more thing just to show you again how this is working. I had my paragraph. Let's just, whoops, I'm writing Sass, not CSS. Paragraph will be font size 3M and a color of white. Save. And there we go. You can see it refreshed over there. It's all working. It's working properly there. And I'm happy. And I can also see these things are all turning green here. And one nice thing about Atom is built by the GitHub people. So it knows that these files are being watched. And anything that's in green right now has actually means those files have been changed. Those are files that have been changed since I cloned my repository. So I don't actually want any of that in my main style sheet. So that should make that empty, and I don't want this here, obviously. That's not really the right setup. So just to finish this off, a couple of quick things to tie up is I'm going to just come into my main.sass. I'm not going to actually, I don't have anything to bring in here yet, but I just want to set this up. So I'm going to do a 1. And 1 is my config files and helpers. So this is my variables, my functions, my mixins, all of that will be imported. I'm going to have a section 2 in here, which is my vendor prefixes. So I'm going to use normalize in here, vendor, not prefixes, just vendor stuff, stuff that's already been created. I'm going to have my third thing that's going to get loaded in is going to be my base styles. So that, again, that's the basic stuff, the fonts, the typography, just global settings, anything like that. 4 is going to be my layout stuff. So layout. What else? We have after that my components. So again, that's my buttons and anything that's different little stuff like that. Buttons, my carousel, my call to action, all of that. 6 will be my, what else do I have? I think that's it actually. I'm going to be stopping at components. If I have anything else, it can get added in. And what I'm going to be doing now is, that's it for the moment. My files are ready to go. My basic thing is set up. And what I've done here is just, I'm going to be importing a whole bunch of files into this main Sass file that then is going to get exported in or compiled into a CSS file. And again, if you're not used to Sass, this might seem a little weird, but once I start doing the project, I think this is going to make a lot more sense. But this is the basic template that I usually use. And because this is the basic template that I really use, what I'd strongly suggest that you do is that you go ahead and if you've made something like this, or you find you're creating a file structure that's a lot like this and you're always doing the same thing, save it as your template file so you don't have to create something like this over and over and over again every single time, because this just took me half an hour to do and that's such a waste of time. I could use this for every single project I do now. I'd probably want to build out the basic structure of my HTML file too, and then save that, and it's a template, and bang, we're all done. So for this video, let's do one last thing of taking all of this. So you can see that there's been 4 changes, and the way this works is that's empty, that's a file empty. This is my Prepros, which I'm going to add to my ignore, and you can see here is my Sass file. All right, so super. So what I want to do now is I want to commit all of these to the site. I want to say that these are all good, these are live, these are things that I'm working with. So all I'm going to do is I want to give a little summary. So let's just call it created template for site. I'm not going to give a long description, just added main.sass. I don't need a description for this, it's pretty self-evident. So I created the template for the site that we will be using to build this out, and I'm going to commit all of this to the master. And now there's no more local changes. So I could take a look just to show you guys what that's actually done. We can see right now that that I've refreshed. Everything else is in there. So a minute ago we added the CSS, my Sass index, and again I should ignore that. I'll do that in the meantime. And we can see if I can even come into my Sass file and open it up and see it's all there. And so if you want, you can clone this, get it on yours, make some pull requests on it. If you're not sure how that all works, don't worry about it, but you can follow along. Hopefully you get a better idea of how Github works and how Sass works while you're watching me do this. Now in the next video, things are going to be much more fun. We're actually going to start building the site. So we're going to be taking a look at just the markup. Not as fun as the CSS, but the markup super important. It's what sets the structure for everything else. So we're going to be doing the markup for the entire site, all of the HTML in the next video, and after that we're going to jump into doing the really cool stuff of exploring Sass and all the real power that that does have. If you like this video and you're excited for this series, please like the video, and if you have liked it and you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing so you can keep getting new content like this every single Wednesday. And of course, if you have any comments or questions, please do not be shy. Leave them down below. Don't forget, there's some useful links down in the description, so if you're looking to learn more about Sass or GitHub or anything like that, go and check those out. And have yourselves a good one, guys. Until the next video, take it easy.